Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy in the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about when we talk about faith. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Leslie.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's a bright, shiny, crisp morning here in New England.
It is.
It's very
It's a classic.
It's classic. It is. It's I saw a funny thing that was like, everyone in New England is like, it's so collegiate.
Oh, gee.
This time of year. So I put on my best like little Ivy League collar to feel very studious today. So I'm ready to go.
Oh my goodness.
Diving in to our podcast today, I wanted to actually loop back to last week because something has stuck with me all week. Which is you said that I'm going to quote you in front of you and quote you probably wrong.
I can deconstruct it later.
Thank you. That that you said we have been expecting less of each other and of our churches, and that maybe it's time to expect more from each other and from our church. And especially the church element, I think, really stuck with me, this idea that we can be more and we should be more. Say.
Would you like me to respond?
Please do.
To all of the above.
I'll just pick an entry point and dive in.
I think that, and I can't remember the source of this comment, but it also struck with me that the gist of this comment is, as we have watched the church decline over the last many, many years, the question was, is it possible that this is in large part, and this seems very counterintuitive, that this is because we've actually expected less of ourselves rather than more? And I was really struck by that comment because I think what we're also hearing these days is that many people have opted out of not just church, but nonprofit commitments and so on, because what they've said is, look, we don't have enough time.
Sure.
You know, we're busy in so many different directions. And how is it that you expect us to get, involved in these ways?
Right.
And yet, actually, historically, people have been very involved in all kinds of institutions in very healthy ways.
Right.
And I think that has eroded over a period of time. And so now, as we're looking to the future, I think we're emerging out of a mindset in which we were really told for many, many years that we had to create faith communities that were based around people's needs. Now, maybe we're starting to shift back towards a view that what we really want to do is to appeal to their highest aspirations. And I think the difference here is that it's one thing to say to people, we really want you to be involved in our community of faith, and we're going to tell you how that's going to look like. We're going to tell you what that's going to look like.
Right.
You're going to meet the institution's needs, as opposed to saying, we want to help you discover your callings. We want to give you resources to help you do that. That may actually bring more demand on your life in some ways.
Sure.
But we also think that you'll be much more satisfied from it.
So it's being an empowering tool versus being a mechanism that you become a cog in.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's well said. And I do think that so many people I've known over the years have said, please don't ask me to serve on one more committee. Please don't ask me to do that. Or you can go ahead and ask me, but the answer is no.
Yeah.
Right?
I think committee has become a bad word.
It's not good right now.
It's not great. It's not, no.
I don't want to be a committee recruiter for my vocation.
Yeah. I mean, a phrase that gets tossed around our house a lot is designed by committee.
Yeah.
Which is not a positive thing, especially in our house. As you can imagine, a couple great people.
Can I give you a really good example of what we're talking about?
Yes.
That I had not even thought about until just this very moment.
Exciting.
Many, many years ago, when I was serving in my first congregation, there was a couple in my congregation I got to know. They had 3 children. They already had a pretty busy life. Right? A lot going on there. They were both teachers. And one day, Brian came into my office and he said, I want you to know something we're thinking about. We're thinking about leaving town. And he said, what we really think we want to do is teach, but in an international school.
Oh.
And so all they wanted from me was to be a sounding board,
Yeah.
right? Because it was going to be too frightening for them to talk with their family members who were like, you're going to go where?
Yeah.
You're going to all that?
Yeah, they're not getting an objective opinion.
Right. So the thing that struck me about that is that, this wonderful couple, by the way, they often were asked to serve on committees in the life of the church and always struggled to do that because they had so many commitments.
Sure.
But here was a case in point where they were going to uproot their entire lives, move to another country, go through all kinds of changes, which this was going to be more demanding.
Right.
It was going to be harder to do, but it was coming from their heart.
Oh, yeah.
It was coming through their soul. And they just said, should we even be thinking about this? Does it make sense to? And so all I did was I kept feeding questions back to them. And lo and behold, they did that. They uprooted their lives, and they wound up serving in international schools in all kinds of, for them, amazing places.
Yeah.
And I think they were incredibly fulfilled by that. I think they were incredibly stretched by that. Maybe there were times when they wished they hadn't done it, right? Totally frustrated by it.
Yeah,
just imagine all the red tape they had to deal with in order, to get all of the proper certifications and whatnot. But I think back on them, not everyone has to go to that extreme.
Yeah.
But my thought is there are callings. There's not one calling. There are many callings in us over the course of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about being called that also comes with it this sense of being stretched and pulled out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And that is kind of like good exercise. We feel better for it. We might not feel too great while we're doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never doing this exercise again. And then we're done and think, okay, I did it. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I did.
Does that help though?
No, I like that a lot. It sounds like when your efforts are aligned or in alignment, when your efforts are in alignment.
Well said.
Is kind of the phrase I was looking for while you were telling that story. It's, it's that sort of cliche of like, oh, when you work for yourself, you never work a day in your life. Or, like when you do your passion, you never work a day in your life, which I think is a bit of a misnomer because there's so much effort.
Right.
But it's when that effort feels meaningful, when your efforts feel aligned with what you want to spend your time doing.
Yes.
I think that time moves differently.
I think that's very much the experience of people I've known.
Yeah.
I love the way that you've said this, when the effort is meaningful, because the passion may or may not be there.
Right.
I think sometimes we place too much of that kind of expectation on ourselves. When we hear the phrase, follow your bliss or follow your passion, I think a lot of times good work is not necessarily passionate work.
Yeah.
But we can still feel like it's coming, from the center of our being, and that it's doing something that's very satisfying for us and potentially very meaningful for other people.
Because I feel like that the words passion or bliss, they have an expectation for how you're going to feel while you're doing that work.
A certain emotional mood.
And this idea that you'll be like, oh, this is just the best thing ever. This is the easiest thing. And I think like you were saying, it's like sometimes while you're doing it, it's not the easiest. It's not the most freeing, you're not like skipping through a field, wildflowers.
I haven't had many of those skipping through the field.
No, yeah, not in professional world, but at the end of the day, you can look back and say, I did something today.
Yep.
I feel satisfied. The word satisfaction, I feel like, is a really great word because there's something balanced, and it's like, we say when you've had a really great meal and you're satisfied, you haven't overindulged, right? You haven't underfed yourself. You are satisfied. And there's a balance.
Yes.
In that word that I like.
Yep.
I
like that.
It's not too much. It's not too little. And I feel like you can, it's to go. I think exercise is a really fantastic comparison because I feel like it's kind of a circle of like, if you do too little, you're tired. If you do too much, you're tired. And you kind of sometimes you can't figure out which one it is for your body. I was like, is my body telling me to rest or is my body telling me to move?
Yes.
Because I'm exhausted.
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
I do.
Like sometimes I'm so exhausted but I realize to find energy, I need to exercise or move my body or, like get up and going, though my body's like tired.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think and it is hard to find that place. It is interesting because I think studies have shown, and there's a beautiful book called Flow, in which the author explores this very topic, that too little stress in our lives is actually as big a problem as too much.
Like gravity.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Get the right amount.
Just get the right amount, yeah.
Either you're going to be pasted to the earth, right, or you're going to fly off
and you have no muscle
stratosphere. So,
sorry, that came way more random than I meant it to.
I think it's a great image. Thank you.
It made perfect sense in my mind.
Oh, my goodness.
Please continue your thought about stress.
Well, I love your thought about, I don't think we can overemphasize that satisfaction part. I have this memory when I was little, and I guess I must have been going through a point in time when I wasn't exercising a whole lot or something, and my brother said, okay, we're going for a walk, older brother. And we went for a walk.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And I remember coming back, and I just remember my brother saying, look at his face.
Oh no.
Have you ever seen a face that red before?
No.
But I remember the moment as being incredibly satisfying because I had stretched myself, had been forced to stretch myself beyond a certain point. And I guess that's where I'm coming back to with the whole notion of expectation. I think that in our communities of faith, we have created a culture of expectation that was basically about the institution's needs.
Yeah.
And now we're asking the question, how can we help you to realize your dreams, your callings, your hopes, which will in their own way have great demand, but to your point, will be satisfying? So
yeah. And I think it's an entirely different position for a faith community to be in. I think historically they have set themselves up for failure as saying that they are this moral authority. And when you make yourself a moral authority and then you don't live up to it, there's problems. There's fundamental problems I think to me that's like the third rail of lifting yourself to this thing that you were only going to get toppled off.
Yeah.
Versus it being a community of flawed humans trying our best, being in community, being compassionate, being generous to one another and the world. To me, I feel like we need new words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it feels like what we are building and what we're part of here feels so fundamentally different than the mental picture I get in my mind when someone says, like a church or even Christianity. To me, this is maybe something more in tune, more in line with the very earliest church of like 12 dudes wandering around.
Right.
And I love this image that you've given me over the years of these disciples being just kind of clueless.
Fumbling along.
And I really relate to that.
Oh, bless their hearts.
So deeply.
Yeah.
And they've got this great leader and he's just like, okay, seriously.
Didn't we cover this already?
Were you listening? And it's so relatable and it's just, not taking that too seriously, which is helpful, but there's something so fundamentally human there.
Oh, yes.
In their flaws, in their trying their best.
And you think about it, this is a religious tradition's core stories. Right?
Yeah.
And to show the humanity of people in that way, how can it not be endearing?
Yeah.
And then coming back to us. And again, that's why one thing I've heard people say over the years, maybe they've had to care for a loved one at home for an extended period of time, or their job put extraordinary demands on them for a time, or whatever it was. And people have said to me, I'm so sorry I can't be more involved right now, but I've got this, this commitment. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean more involved? You're already caring for someone in an extraordinary way. You're already being required by your employer to do your work in a really, intense kind of way, and all these other examples. And to think of how it makes me feel really badly right now, but to think about how people have said, oh gosh, I wish I could have, given more time to the church No, the church is really designed to help you, to help others ask, so how in terms of where you are right now, can we support you and encourage you?
Yeah.
Rather than making people think, oh, well, you can come back and do that when things are differently, or are going differently in your lives.
It seems like there's sometimes a misunderstanding that we're only there when we need you.
That's correct.
Versus that we're here for you.
Right.
And when you're busy or we're still here for you, like the very, very bestest of friends.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think that what I've tried to say in those experiences, how can you be the church right where you are? I mean, it's always about demonstrating love, generosity, whatever it might be, peace, in terms of where we are in any given moment. And so that's why I increasingly look at church as a base camp, and from the base camp, you go out into the world, hopefully refreshed, renewed with some good insights. But I think about all the people over the years who couldn't even come to a service of worship because they had another kind of commitment. And they would often feel guilty about that, or like they were letting the church down. And so to help people think in a completely new way about that. And I tend to agree with you. I don't necessarily think we have the words right now.
Yeah.
And that's all right. We find our way towards this new time. And that's part of what I think it's an exciting time, because it could potentially be a much healthier time.
Sure.
Right. Where we're clear about what the organization is really for and what it can do for us and what it can't. And then we're also clearer about how important our callings are at any particular time. I remember years ago watching this movie, and Nick Nolte was in it, called Lorenzo's Oil, about this was a couple, a husband and wife, whose child was diagnosed with this extraordinarily rare disease. And all they could do was to try to think about, how are we going to create resources? They almost became their own medical research team.
Wow.
And ultimately, I think they did find some kind of resolution for their child's illness. But they had to go to such extreme measures to do that. So again, in that case, they were following their calling, right? Their calling was to love their child and to figure out a way, if they could, to alleviate some of that suffering. And I think that, to me, what an extraordinary example of love. And had that couple been affiliated with the church, I hope the church would have said, how can we be a community of love for you while you're engaged in that search?
Right.
Right. Not, hey, we hope when things get better, you'll serve on the mission committee.
Right. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
So I think that's the way I'm trying to think. How are we equipping people towards that kind of mission?
Yeah.
Right. That kind of understanding of themselves, in a way, as the mission.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the wonderful nature of our digital ministry, if you will.
Gosh, yes. Yeah.
That, we are able to provide content, we're able to provide encouragement, hopefully, to our community and the world that can access it whenever they are able. And it's there for them. And this really just like, here you go.
Yeah.
I made this for you.
Right. It's a gift.
And it's here if you would like it. No pressure. Literally zero pressure. But we made it if you'd like to listen to it or watch it. And it's just really gentle, just like, ta-da.
Yes. Right.
And that's the really amazing thing I think about, technology gets a bad rap. Frankly, rightfully so. But there's some, the way that technology has come so far and has, made the kind of cameras and microphones we use even 10 years ago would have been impossible for a church to afford.
Yep.
A church our size to afford.
Yep.
It was only for like TV broadcast stations or the churches with just like gobs of money. And, the past 5 years, it's just become so much more. I mean, I even go back and listen to our old podcasts where we bought, like, I got us the best microphones we could afford. It's rough, guys. I actually went back and like tried to re-edit it, which was helpful because we have better software now. It's amazing what we can do with better software.
Clean it up.
I could go about this for hours. But it's, I think that's the really nice thing about what we are trying to hopefully offer to the community at large. It's just a nice, like, whenever you feel like it during the week. I mean, that's the thing about the podcast that I think this podcast is fun because we can, I like to listen. I like to picture people listening to this on the train.
Yeah.
Or in their cars.
Me too.
I listen to podcasts in my car. So that's when I listen to. I will legit listen to our podcast and laugh. And I was here the first time. And the second time while editing it. And I'm like,
that's a great credit.
That was a good point. That was a good point Ed made.
Well, it was just so lovely this morning coming into work and having one person say, I listened to the online message, while I was driving the car. Yeah. And you think it's where he was.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was traveling back from where he had been making a visit with a family member and was able to enjoy that and take that with him and make that connection. And that would not have been possible here, not so very long ago.
Not so very long ago at all, yeah.
So I think it's in a way, I think about these stories that have been handed down to us in the New Testament, these stories about Jesus. And if we just stop for a moment and think, here's a person who really never stopped anywhere for very long, right? He sort of went from village to village to village and interacted, kind of doing a little bit of what we're doing, saying, here
you go.
It's a story. Take, eat, do what you will. Mm-hmm. But you don't see, coercive behavior. You know, it's really, really taking the risk, as he says on one occasion, just to throw a lot of seeds out there.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And some of them we know ahead of time are not going to make it. He's very clear about that. Mm-hmm. But some of them are. And he does go on to say that the ones that actually will take root are going to produce, tenfold, 100-fold. Mm-hmm. So there's something really kind of wonderfully magical about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what a good conversation or a good thought can lead to. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're trying to do.
I love it. Well, I would love to hear your thoughts, dear listener, on what we're talking about today. What to you is, the church, air quotes. What is there something in that for you? Like, as in your ideal situation, can we be there for you? Can we be a conversation partner with you? Where are you finding that you need tools for your own personal expression of generosity and kindness and being a member of a community? We'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel, Round Hill Radio, or visit roundhillradio.org. There's a form right at the top, and we would just love to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening or watching today. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.